The set of Jimmy Kimmel Live was bathed in its usual gleam of celebrity allure, the lights primed to catch every glint of charm, wit, and spontaneity. But the evening had a simmering undercurrent from the start that not even the well-trained audience coordinator could smooth over. Al Pacino, draped in understated black, stepped onto the stage to thunderous applause that carried with it not only admiration, but awe, an entire lifetime of cinematic greatness personified in a single man's entrance. At first, the air crackled, with anticipation, every soul in the room knowing they were witnessing a moment with a living legend. The beginning of the interview meandered through safer waters, reflections on old roles, jokes about aging in Hollywood, snippets of stories from Pacino's early theater days in New York. But there was a sense that both host and guest were tiptoeing around something unspoken, a tension building beneath each exchange. Jimmy Kimmel, ever the smirking provocateur, leaned into this tension with calculated ease, making his way toward topics that straddled the line between irreverent and invasive. He brought up tabloid rumors, stories from film sets long past, and framed his questions in the veneer of humor. But Pacino's reactions began to shift, his smiles shortening, his eyes narrowing ever so slightly with each push. When Kimmel invoked the name of a late director with whom Pacino had a famously strained relationship, implying a violent fallout, and suggesting through a joking tone that Pacino's passion for performance had often bled into belligerence, the atmosphere changed. Palpably, Pacino did not laugh. He didn't flinch either, but a stillness overtook him that hushed the room. He leaned forward, steepled his fingers, and with that gravelly voice that had delivered Shakespeare and gangster decrees alike, he challenged the host's narrative, not with defensiveness but with a calm that reeked of authenticity and frustration long held at bay. The audience, many of whom had laughed moments earlier, sat slack-jawed as Pacino unraveled what he called the dangerous entertainment of false memory, his voice rising only enough to underscore his words, not theatrical, but deeply personal. He talked not about that director, but about the cost of his career, the sleepless nights before opening curtain, the agony of method immersion, the cold stares from critics who never walked through a scene but felt empowered to judge its soul. Kimmel, momentarily at a loss for his usual quips, tried to steer things back to lighter terrain, but Pacino wasn't finished. With a glint in his eye that had once silenced entire courtroom scenes on screen, he began recounting the sacrifices that had built his legacy. The friends buried, the relationships strained, the inner demons wrestled into submission on behalf of an audience who would never know his real name beyond a character's silhouette. He didn't do it for applause, he said, nor for vindication, but because the truth had become a currency too often ignored in favor of ratings. Kimmel sat frozen, an occasional chuckle escaping his lips like nervous tics, unsure whether he was still running a show or bearing witness to a reckoning. Pacino then turned not to the camera, but to the live audience, scanning their faces, noting the humanity behind their dazzled gazes. He asked softly whether they'd ever felt used, by media, by expectations, by people who only wanted them for their best lines, their shiniest moments. And in that reflection, the divide between performer and viewer began to blur. There were no punchlines now, only the raw truth of a man who had spent 5 decades performing miracles with his craft, being told in jest that he was a problem, a legend too difficult to contain. After another long pause, Pacino stood. No announcement, no fanfare. He simply rose from his chair with a solemnity that turned even the camera operators to stone. Kimmel mumbled something about going to commercial, but no one heard it over the silence that had swallowed the set whole. As Pacino turned and walked off stage, he passed a line of crew members who instinctively moved aside, granting the icon his quiet exit. In the aftermath, social media erupted into chaos and awe. The clip of Pacino's walk-off became instant, legend triggering think pieces, impassioned threads, and reactions ranging from outrage to reverence. Some called it a meltdown, others a masterclass in dignity. Within hours, Pacino truth trended globally, as younger audiences discovered a side of the actor they hadn't seen beyond vintage reels and award show montages. Kimmel offered a half-hearted explanation in the following episode, chalking it up to one of those unpredictable Hollywood nights. But the hollowness of that statement only deepened the divide. Days later, Pacino released a statement. Not a press release, not a clarification, but a handwritten letter posted on his social media, in which he reflected on the evening with the same unfiltered honesty he had shown on stage. He didn't apologize. He didn't accuse. He simply thanked those who had listened and reminded everyone that even legends bleed. Industry veterans sent private messages of support. Other actors, emboldened, began to speak up about their own experiences with the commodification of personal pain for public amusement. The incident catalyzed a wider conversation about celebrity culture and the evolving responsibility of media, figures in an age where authenticity matters more than sound bites. In walking off that stage, Pacino didn't just end an interview. He started a movement. One that forced an entire generation to reconsider the price of performance and the dignity owed to those who carry our stories on their shoulders. And, though he never returned to Kimmel's stage, his silence in the weeks that followed only amplified the message that had rung out louder than any scripted line he'd ever delivered. That truth, when spoken with purpose, could shake the foundations of even the most polished platforms.